Bullying would be repeated. In other words, initially, if there was a bullying situation, and again, it really depends on the case by case. There would be a discussion. There could be a class. We would go into the class and do a whole presentation on bullying. Discussions with the people involved, including people on all sides, and all the bystanders. If it, again, case by case, but if it happened repeatedly, we would probably end up in the same, we could end up in the same situation. But it really depends on the situation.
Good question. I guess with certain aspects of it, I'm a little skeptical. For example, I'll say a child, a student in our area, not necessarily in our school, was part of a cyberbullying. And the school decided to do the restorative justice. I guess the way to say it is the victim, the one that was being bullied in the situation, was brought into the program to sit down and talk, not doing anything wrong other than their response to it was, obviously a little bit of backlash, which is understandable. Are you finding that any of the ones that are being bullied, specifically in a cyberbullying situation where it's verbal, written, internet, are you getting any backlash, any hard feelings, or why am I sitting in here? Why am I being pulled out of class when somebody said something to me? That's kind of the negative that I'm hearing, as they feel like they're being punished coming out of class or having to leave the situation to talk when they were on the receiving end. How do you respond to that?
I guess everyone handles it differently, but from personal experience, I'll never put a victim and the bully in the same room. Kind of my approach along with the victim is, what's going on? I'm really worried about you. What would you feel comfortable with? Are you okay with us talking to the bully? Sometimes we have to, and we'll say, we do have to talk to this person. We can make it up and say that you didn't tell us and we heard it from a teacher. We try to make that student feel as comfortable as possible and include them, but not make them feel like they're on the receiving end of the punishment. Just trying to make them feel comfortable, and then also provide some emotional support to them, because they're the ones going through a lot of that, and want to make sure that they're okay and that they feel safe. And yes,
for the older kids, the last thing we would do is force them to have to be in the same room with the bully. Now, if they were feeling strong enough support, they may opt to do it, but we would never push them or force them to do that. Because you're right, that would be really counterproductive.
And that's why it's a process. It takes time to get this, because eventually we want that student to come into the building, so we want them to feel comfortable. We don't want them to have that fear of what happened in the past. So we have to work with them emotionally and socially so that they have that understanding, the knowledge, so that we can move past this and figure this out so that they're comfortable.
And keep in mind that, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, but isn't also part of this is when you have, the victim saying the cyberbullying, that by letting them be part of this process, that you're trying to empower them to be able to be part of the process of healing in all of this, so that they are getting truly what they need out of the situation to be able to move on. It's about not applying a blanket solution to every problem. Some kids may feel, that just simple apology is enough, and they move on and they, throw some dirt on it and move along. Some kids are going to need more of that hand-holding in that, and it's, at least from my experiences, it's supposed to empower them to voice feel comfortable enough to voice what they truly need to make them no longer feel like a victim in the situation.
So I always like to ask, what do you need to feel better for this to be right for you? What do you need from the other person? How do you want to be involved, if you want to be involved at all? And just kind of, again, yes, giving them the power to be able to make that decision too, and to be involved in that way, so that they feel like they have some say in that too.
So I hear a lot of talk about the process with the student, the teacher. At what point do you bring your parents into this discussion? Like, where at that point is it you're having that conversation with the student, but the parents know nothing about this yet? So when do parents get brought into the conversation, or at least into the, know what's going on.
So it depends, the span is so large, so keep in mind that when you're talking about bullying is targeted power over someone action. Bullying is not someone that like kicks somebody if you mean. So make sure we have that definition straight. Kids are mean sometimes. Kids are knock people over or hit someone, that's not bullying. Bullying is like a very targeted, I'm going after you, and I'm doing that to you. Certainly on a bullying issue, all of what you're talking about, yeah, that's all there. All of that, making sure that the parents are involved, making sure that kids are comfortable. We see very little of that. I know people think we see a lot of that, but we don't. We see kids being mean. Kids are mean sometimes. So that part, depending on when you're on that side of it, you go through, there's a gray line of when you contact parents. Certainly someone injured, yes. Every time you contact parents, someone injured. Somebody knocked somebody over, someone got injured, of course. Other than that, you're looking at, when's the right point to bring parents in? Bullying, yes. We're going to contact every parent to make sure everybody knows, because that's a targeted behavior. The other side of it, and somewhere in between on that, is where you're always kind of looking at your gray area.
So like an example, one that we just handled were two girls, one was upset because the other one wanted to play with two other friends and not her at recess, right? So you may not call home and let the parents know about that if it's just, okay, what happened? I was mad because she played with her two friends and not me and they solved it in 5 minutes. That may not, warrant a fair call.
Yeah, but what'll happen is Susie will go home and at dinner time will tell mommy that she was talking with the social worker. Oh, why were you talking with the social worker? And that's when the level of questioning comes in as a parent as to why wasn't I involved or why wasn't I notified my child was talking to the social worker or the dean or whatever.
So I can share with you, anytime that I'm dealing with a student, I'm calling home. I'm calling home to let them know if it's something really small. In fact, I dealt with an issue today that occurred last week. And I spent 5 phone calls with the parents, but everyone's on the same page and everyone feels comfortable and feels safe now. And the issue, which people believed it was bullying, which we were able to all determine that it wasn't bullying, it was just being mean, and it was just, learning from that. So there's constant communication. And we have a log that, as we said, we document everything, and then we have a follow-up section that we go into and we document the phone calls. Because when I'm talking to you as a parent, I'm listening to what you're saying, and then I want to make sure that I understand your needs and wants of you and your child, and I want to make sure that I'm able to give that to your child and to all the other children. But we document it. We put it on paper so that we have a complete report.
Yeah, it's based on judgment. And with experience, your judgment's going to get better and better and better. I hate to use this as an analogy. It's like driving a car. You're going to get better and better and better from time to time. Judgment that may be questionable, and that's going to be what you hear that tends to undermine the system. So keep in mind, we've only been doing this for 2 years. And I think we've made great gains, and we're going to get better and better and better as our judgment gets better and better and better, and the processes get better and better and better. But don't be fooled. That doesn't preclude us from taking it up to a level that it needs to be taken. And this board has seen that. And so I just want to be very clear that it's a matter of taking the action and making sure that the result of that action is something equal, not greater. It's like hanging up a picture on a wall. You're not going to take a sledgehammer to put a hammer into the wall to hang up a picture. You may use a ball-peen hammer because that's what's appropriate. So you have to measure it, and we're going to get better and better and better over time. And so the good thing is we have a team of individuals. We have someone dedicated to really making sure that we're doing a very thorough and thoughtful job. But people are going to slip through the cracks, and we're just getting it better because our judgment's going to be better over time.
So it seems like we have a lot of new resources being put to this. I have a question for Dr. Malley. How much is the state giving us for this funded mandate that we're going to build 100? For all the extra training and the extra stuff that we needed to support this?
Let's rephrase it. Once again, this is another unfunded
Well,
mandate.
unfunded, okay.
So again, here's the state saying the districts need to do this, but they're not providing the money. And the evidence-based model, based on my interpretation, I don't see it. So remember, Dr. Schilling had stated this year, the new evidence-based model, which is wonderful. This is great. But they've given us a very little latitude or reprieve in making sure that.
I know, I just.
You know I know.
So, thank you. So, any other questions for the great presentation, or?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next part is social thinking.
So a new initiative that we're starting at League this year is social thinking. So, and Brittany Denier is going to speak to you about social thinking and what a new thing we're using in all of K through 4 at League this year.
One curriculum that I really like, some parents may have heard of it if their students are aware of it, is the Zones of Regulation. It was actually created by an occupational therapist. And typically it's used in small group settings, so a social worker or an occupational therapist will use it with individual students, small groups of students. But last year, myself and the social worker over at Giles kind of started to dip our toes in presenting it to full classrooms. So there were a handful of classrooms that I worked with all year last year, working on Zones of Regulation. So Zones of Regulation focuses on self-regulation. So everyone has the ability to self-regulate, students, kids, adults. And basically self-regulation is being aware of your body and being able to sort of manipulate the way that you respond to situations so that it's appropriate for the situation. So it's a lot about self-control, anger management, self-management, being able to manage your behaviors and your emotions for the situation. A lot of this kind of goes back to the cognitive behavioral therapy model, which looks at how your emotions and the way that you think are connected to how your body feels, which is connected to how you behave. So we teach students to recognize how their bodies feel. A lot of times kids don't recognize that they are going from 0 to 100, and that's why they kind of have explosions sometimes. They don't recognize that my palms are getting really sweaty, or I'm making a fist, or my face is getting hot, that means I'm getting angry. So we teach students to kind of recognize those signs in their bodies and then teach them ways of managing that when they start to feel that way so they can kind of calm down. We want to be able to teach our students good coping and regulation skills because that helps them to be able to be focused and stay in the classroom. It helps them when they're stressed, when they're anxious. So some research that I found kind of related to self-regulation. Higher academic achievement is more likely when interventions include self-regulation components. Students are able to focus in class, they're able to stay in class if they can regulate their bodies. There's a stronger correlation with school readiness with self-regulation abilities more so than IQ or entry-level reading or math skills. And teachers can have a positive effect on the students' self-regulation skills. Social thinking it's a model that was created by a speech pathologist, Michelle Garcia-Winter. She presents quite a bit. There's a lot of books ranging from preschool through high school that work on this model. And basically social thinking helps, it is a lot of times targeted to students who are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD, but it helps kids learn how to think and behave in social situations. So they're able to think and observe how is the way that I'm behaving and the way that I'm responding to a situation making others think and feel about me. And then they're also learning the connection between their thoughts, their feelings, and behavior. So not only are they able to physically regulate their bodies, but then they're also able to think about how their actions are making other